She walked into the Clover Street Clinic with a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket and $38 inside her coat pocket. Mara Ellison had come for a routine checkup, nothing more than weight-breathing skin, feeding the ordinary questions new mothers answer while trying to look less tired than they are. The clinic sat on a gray corner in Dayton beside a closed pharmacy and a laundromat with fogged windows. Inside, the air smelled like old carpet and soap. Mara wrote Nora Ellison on the intake form. She paused at the line for father and left it blank. Nobody asked. That was one mercy she had learned to accept. She sat under a poster about infant sleep and held Nora close. The baby made a soft sound against her chest. Not a cry, just a reminder that she was alive. Mara had not slept more than 2 hours at once since the birth. Still, she had dressed carefully. Clean sweater, washed hair pulled back. When the nurse called her name, Mara stood too quickly and almost swayed. Room 3, the nurse said. Mara followed her down a narrow hall where the fluorescent light buzzed. The room had orange chairs, a metal scale, and a paper-covered table. A few minutes later, Alma Greer knocked twice and stepped in. She was 72 years old, small, white-haired, and steady in the way old trees are steady. Years in delivery rooms had taught her how to touch a newborn without waking fear. "Good morning," Alma said. "Who do we have here?" Nora Mara answered. "Beautiful name," Alma said. Alma washed her hands, pulled on gloves, and began the checkup in the same order she had done it thousands of times. Weight first, length, eyes, mouth, reflexes, heartbeat. She listened with the stethoscope and nodded. "Strong lungs," she said. Mara let out a breath she had not known she was holding. Alma smiled, then turned the baby gently to check behind her ears. Her fingers parted the fine dark hair near the right side of Nora's head and stopped. The room seemed to lose sound. Alma did not move for 3 seconds, then 4. Her hand hovered in the air. Mara sat straighter. "What is it?" Alma looked at the mark again. A faint crescent behind the right ear. Small, pale, almost easy to miss. But Alma had seen it before. 3 weeks ago, in Columbus, on another baby. Alma stepped back, reached blindly for the rolling stool, and sat down hard. Her face changed in a way Mara would remember for the rest of her life. Not fear, not surprise, something heavier. Then Alma covered her mouth with both hands and began to cry. Mara pulled Nora against her chest. "What is wrong with her?" Alma shook her head, but the tears kept coming. "Tell me, please tell me what is wrong with my baby." Alma lowered her hands. Her eyes were red. Her voice was unsteady, but every word came out clear. "Your baby is fine." Mara said, "Why are you crying?" Alma looked at the pale blue blanket, then at Mara's face. "Because I have seen that mark before," she said. "And before you say anything else, I need you to listen to all of it." Mara Ellison had grown up in Cincinnati in a narrow house where the front steps cracked every winter, and nobody had money to fix them until spring. Her mother worked a register at a discount grocery and came home with the same advice every night. "Do not wait for people to save you." Mara listened. By 19, she had cleaned motel rooms, folded uniforms in a hospital laundry, and worked breakfast shifts at a diner where men called her sweetheart because they did not know her name. By 23, she had saved enough for a domestic staffing course in Columbus. It was not a dream. It was a door. The Ashford estate stood behind iron gates on a street where the lawns looked combed and even the silence seemed expensive. The driveway curved through shaped trees and ended in front of a house so large it did not look like home. It looked like a place people visited while pretending they were not impressed. Grant Ashford was 49 owner of buildings and downtown blocks with his name hidden inside legal papers. He had been born outside Akron, the son of a warehouse mechanic, and built himself into the kind of man who spoke quietly because nobody in the room could afford not to hear him. He was not a monster. That was part of the danger. Grant noticed things. A broken latch, a tired server, a woman standing too long in a hallway with folded sheets in her arms. But he had trained himself to step around anything that might ask too much of him. Wealth had made his life soft where responsibility should have stayed sharp. His wife, Celeste Ashford, ran the estate like a country under watch. Every flower arrangement, guest towel, dinner plate, and servant schedule passed through her. She was 47, elegant, exact, and so controlled that emotion seemed to arrive only after permission. People in Columbus whispered that she was cold. Mara learned quickly that cold was not the beginning of Celeste. It was what remained after 15 years of smiling through questions about children she never had. 15 years of baby showers for other women, 15 years of doctors' private clinics, prayers, and dinner guests who glanced at her empty hands as if failure could be counted by how quiet a nursery stayed. Control became the only thing Celeste could hold. On Mara's first morning, the head housekeeper, June Talbot, stopped her beside the linen closet. June was thin, gray-eyed, and careful with every word. In this house, she said, you do your work, keep your voice low, and never become memorable. Mara nodded. For 14 months, she tried. She polished tables that reflected chandeliers. She carried trays through rooms where people spoke about money as if it were weather. She learned which floorboards creaked outside Celeste's sitting room and which stairwell let her move unseen. But Grant kept appearing in the kitchen after 11. He would sit at the small wooden table near the pantry jacket, off-tie, loosened one hand around coffee. He rarely drank. The first time Mara found him there, she apologized and turned to leave. No, he said, stay. This is the only room in the house that feels like somebody lives in it. He said it casually. Mara heard the loneliness underneath. She rinsed a cup and placed it in the rack. But loneliness, when it fills a house that large, does not stay hidden. It moves through hallways. It waits in kitchens. It finds one person trained to notice what everyone else ignores. By November, Mara knew the sound of the Ashford house better than she knew her own breathing. She knew when Celeste crossed the upstairs landing because her heels struck the marble without hurry. She knew when Grant was home because the kitchen door stayed open after midnight. She also knew something inside her body had changed. For 2 weeks, she blamed the long shifts. Then the nausea came while she was folding guest towels sharp and sudden enough that she had to grip the counter until it passed. That evening, after her room went dark and the house settled into its expensive silence, Mara sat on the edge of her narrow bed with a pregnancy test in her hand. Positive. She did not cry. Crying would have made it real in a way she was not ready for. Instead, she wrapped the test in tissue, pushed it deep into the trash, and sat with both palms flat on her knees. Grant needed to know. She told herself that for 3 days. Each time she almost spoke, she saw him at the kitchen table, tired, lonely, and kind in the helpless way wealthy men can be kind when nothing has ever truly threatened them. He would be shocked. He might even be gentle, but gentleness did not protect a woman with no savings, no family in Columbus, and a child growing inside her. On the 4th night, Mara carried folded towels past Celeste's sitting room. The door was open only a few inches. She heard Celeste speaking to someone on the phone, her voice calm, almost bored. Petra forgot her place, Celeste said. Mara slowed without meaning to. Petra had been a maid before Mara. Nobody mentioned her except in quick, lowered sentences. Celeste continued. The agency knows not to send her anywhere respectable. Her landlord understood the situation after one call. The woman thought she could take what belonged to me and simply leave. That is not how the world works. Mara stood frozen with the towels against her chest. There was no yelling in Celeste's voice, no rage. That made it worse. It was not a threat spoken in anger. It was a method practiced and clean. A woman like that loses one job, Celeste said, then the next one, then the room she rents. After that, she learns. Mara backed away before the floor could betray her. In her small attic room, she closed the door without making a sound. She looked at the trash bin where the test was buried. She thought of Celeste's voice. She thought of Grant downstairs, probably noticing loneliness and calling it nothing. She thought of the baby, still no bigger than a secret, already standing in the path of a woman who knew how to destroy without raising her voice. Mara understood the shape of the future if she stayed. Celeste would not ruin Grant. Grant was useful, familiar, hers. Celeste would ruin Mara. She would call the agency. She would call landlords. She would make every door in Columbus close before Mara reached it. So Mara moved. She pulled one canvas bag from the top shelf, 2 dresses, work shoes, a sweater, her mother's old photograph, $49 from a jar under the mattress. She left the uniform folded on the chair. Before midnight, Mara walked down the back stairs, crossed the service hall, and stepped into the cold. No one stopped her. At the bus station, she bought the cheapest ticket, leaving first, Dayton. She climbed aboard with one bag, one secret, and no plan except real safe distance. Dayton in February did not welcome anyone kindly. The bus dropped Mara near the station at 2 in the morning, and the wind cut through her sweater before she reached the sidewalk. She had an address for a cousin on Fenton Street, but when she knocked on that door after sunrise, a man she did not know told her the cousin had moved 2 years ago. He closed the door gently. Mara stood on the porch with her canvas bag and understood that gentleness was not the same as help. By the end of that week, she had found a rented room above a hair salon 2 blocks from a grocery with cracked windows and tired produce. The landlady, Mrs. Pruitt, asked for cash, no questions. Mara gave her $100 and kept $23. Work came the way survival often comes, badly timed and poorly paid. Nights cleaning offices downtown, mornings unloading boxes at a warehouse near Route 35. On days when both shifts touched, she slept sitting up with one hand over her stomach, waking whenever the baby moved. She learned Dayton by bus routes. She learned which driver waited if he saw a pregnant woman running. She learned which discount shelf was restocked on Tuesday night. Bread first, eggs if there were any, rice when nothing else stretched far enough. There were days she missed the warm kitchen in Columbus so sharply it angered her. Not Grant, not the house, just the heat, the simple mercy of a room that did not let winter in. Each night before sleep, Mara spoke to the baby. "Today we made it," she would whisper. "Tomorrow we will make it again." That became her prayer. She delivered at Dayton Regional Medical Center on a Thursday after 9 hours of labor. No one sat beside her. No one held a phone to call anyone. She gripped the bed rail and followed the nurse's voice because there was nothing else to follow. At the end of it, a baby cried. Mara turned her head toward the sound with a strength she had not known was left in her. "Is she okay?" "Perfect," the nurse said. "A perfect girl." They placed the baby on Mara's chest, damp and furious and alive. Mara looked down at the small face, the closed eyes, the mouth already searching for comfort. "Nora," she whispered. The name settled over the child like a blanket. For 6 hours, Mara slept with Nora beside her in the clear bassinet. When she woke, a woman she did not recognize stood near the foot of the bed with a clipboard. Older than the night nurse. Soft voice. Calm hands. "Just a billing correction," the woman said. Routine. One signature. Mara blinked hard, trying to read the page. The woman smiled. "You already did the hard part. This is just paperwork." Nora stirred. Mara reached for her, aching everywhere, heavy with exhaustion. The woman pointed to a line near the bottom. "Here." Mara signed. She would remember that moment later. The pen, the clipboard, the word routine, the way the woman took the paper back before Mara could ask anything else. On the second night, Mara woke to a shape in the doorway. A small white-haired woman stood half inside the room, one hand on the frame. She was looking at Nora with an expression Mara could not understand. "Are you a nurse?" Mara asked. The woman stepped back. "Wrong room," she said. Then she was gone. Mara did not call after her. She was too tired, too grateful, too full of the belief that the worst was behind her. The discharge papers said 1 patient, 1 delivery, 1 baby. Mara carried Nora out of Dayton Regional in the pale blue blanket the hospital gave her and believed every word. She did not know another crib had already been emptied before sunrise. Dayton Regional Medical Center had problems that did not show in inspection reports. The walls were clean. The nursery windows were bright. The nurses who did honest work until their feet hurt and their backs burned. But behind that ordinary machine, Maribel Cross had built a quieter one. She was the maternity ward administrator, 58 years old, careful with files, careful with voices, careful with the kind of people nobody listened to when they complained. She knew which mothers arrived alone. She knew which women had no husband listed, no parent in the waiting room, no private doctor, no lawyer, no one asking too many questions at the desk. She never used ugly words for what she did. She called it placement assistance. She called it correcting outcomes. She called it mercy when the people paying her were wealthy enough to make the word sound respectable. Maribel had done it before Mara, 4 times that anyone would ever prove, maybe more that no one could. The method was always the same. Find a mother without witnesses. Wait until the birth had taken all strength from her body. Bring papers when she was too exhausted to read. Adjust the file. Move one infant quietly before the mother knew there was a question to ask. With single births, it was harder. With twins, the lie had room to breathe. 1 baby stayed. 1 baby disappeared into paperwork. The call that opened Mara's file had come months before the delivery. It came from Alma Greer, the same white-haired woman who had stood in Mara's hospital doorway and looked at Nora without stepping fully inside. Alma had spent 35 years bringing babies safely into the world. She had held the hands of frightened girls, tired wives, grieving mothers, and women who had no one. People trusted her because she did not tremble when a room became difficult. Then her own daughter began to break in a way Alma could not fix. Celeste Ashford had wanted a child for 15 years. Alma had watched her become quieter each year, sharper each year, more polished, and less alive. She had watched hope turn into schedules, doctors close nursery doors, and finally control. A mother can mistake helplessness for permission. Alma told herself that Celeste deserved one soft thing in that cold house. She told herself a baby would be loved. She told herself money meant safety. She told herself a poor woman alone in Dayton might have more trouble raising a child than a rich woman in Columbus. She did not tell herself the harder truth, that the poor woman was still a mother, that love without consent is not rescue, that a child cannot be given away by someone who has no right to give her. So Alma called Maribel Cross. She asked questions in careful language and received careful answers. No one said theft. No one said fraud. No one said mother. They spoke the way people speak when they are trying to hide the real shape of what they want from themselves. By the time Mara reached Dayton Regional, the path had already been cleared. By the time Nora cried on Mara's chest, another name was waiting for her sister in Columbus, inside the Ashford estate tonight. Alma Greer had spent her life inside rooms where people learned the world could change in one breath. She had seen fear, joy loss relief, and the silence that comes when a person knows something cannot be undone. Still, she had never felt a silence like Room 3 at the Clover Street Clinic. Mara sat on the exam table with Nora pressed against her chest. Her fingers held the blanket so tightly the cotton gathered in small white lines between them. She did not scream. She did not stand. She only watched Alma with the stillness of someone who had survived too much to waste strength on panic. Alma wiped her face with her sleeve. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Then tell me." Alma looked at the baby, then forced herself to look at Mara. "You gave birth to 2 babies at Dayton Regional." Mara did not blink. Alma swallowed. "Twin girls." The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Somewhere beyond the door, a receptionist laughed softly. Life went on in the hallway with ordinary cruelty. Mara lowered her eyes to Nora. "No," she said. It was not denial. It was a word spoken by a woman placing both hands against a door before opening it. Alma leaned forward. "You were not told. The record was changed. Your discharge papers were made to show 1 delivery, 1 child. But there was another girl. She was born the same night." Mara's mouth parted, but no sound came out. Alma continued because stopping would have been cowardice. She had the same mark behind her right ear, a pale crescent, exactly like Nora's. "I saw it when she was 3 days old." Mara looked up then, where Alma closed her eyes briefly. Columbus. The word entered the room and seemed to take all the air. Mara's face changed, not into grief, not yet, but into something sharper, where in Columbus Alma's hands folded together in her lap. The Ashford estate. For the first time, Nora began to cry. Mara rocked her automatically, but her eyes stayed on Alma. Who took her? A woman named Maribel Cross handled the records. She worked at Dayton Regional. She had done things like this before. She looked for mothers who were alone, mothers no one would question for. Mara's voice came out low. "And you know this because Alma looked down at her hands. Those hands had held hundreds of newborns and now looked strange to her, as if they belonged to someone she could not defend. Because I made the first call." Mara stopped rocking. Alma made herself continue. "Celeste Ashford is my daughter. She wanted a child for 15 years. I told myself I was helping her. I told myself the baby would be safe. I told myself comfortable lies when she wants to do something unforgivable and still sleep at night." Mara stared at her. Alma's voice broke. "What I did was help take your daughter while you were lying in a hospital bed asking if your baby was okay." The room went still. Mara looked down at Nora. One tear fell onto the blue blanket. She wiped it away with her thumb. When she spoke, her voice was cold and clear. "Is she alive?" "Yes." Mara stood once. "Take me to her." Alma drove. Mara sat in the passenger seat with Nora buckled behind them in a borrowed car seat, one hand on the door handle, the other around the diaper bag. The highway stretched flat and gray beneath a winter sky. Bare trees lined both sides like witnesses that had learned not to speak. Neither woman said much. Alma tried once. "Mara, I am sorry." Mara did not turn. "Do not use my name like it makes us close." After that, the car stayed quiet. Mara used the silence the way she had always used silence. She worked inside it. She lined up every fact and refused to let feelings scatter them. She had given birth to twins. One daughter had been kept from her. That child was alive. That child was in the Ashford house. Grant was there. Celeste was there. Everyone who had chosen or looked away was waiting at the end of the road. She thought of Grant at the kitchen table, saying the kitchen felt like the only room where somebody lived. She thought of how easily a lonely man could turn tenderness into something he did not have to answer for later. He had known enough to wonder. A pregnant maid disappeared from his house in November, and he chose the comfort of not asking. That would end today. When the iron gates appeared, Mara felt nothing dramatic. No shaking, no tears. Only the hard center that had carried her through Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, labor, hunger, and 3 weeks of mothering on almost no sleep. Alma pressed the intercom. A voice answered. "Alma Greer," she said. The gates opened. The driveway curved through shaped trees toward the Ashford estate. The house looked exactly as Mara remembered, and smaller than it should have. Power often did, once you returned with the truth. June Talbot opened the door. For 1 second, the head housekeeper only stared. Her eyes moved from Mara to the baby carrier, then back to Mara's face. "Oh," June whispered. Mara stepped inside. "Where is he?" June did not ask who. "In his office." Grant Ashford came out before June could move. He stopped in the hallway as if the floor had shifted under him. His eyes went first to Mara, then to Nora, asleep against her shoulder, then to Alma, behind her. "Mara," he said. "No," Mara answered. "Not yet." He closed his mouth. From the stairs came slow footsteps. Celeste Ashford appeared on the landing wearing a cream sweater, her hair pinned neatly, her face composed in that flawless way Mara remembered. In her arms was a baby in a white sleeper. Mara saw the child. The room fell away. No proof was needed beyond the small mouth, the dark hair, the same fragile crease between the brows. Mara knew her before anyone said a word. Her body knew her. Something inside Mara reached across the foyer before her hands could. Celeste came down the last step slowly. "Who is she?" Celeste asked. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened around the baby. Alma moved forward, then stopped. She looked at her daughter with a grief that had no defense left. Her mother, Alma, said. The sentence landed like broken glass. Grant turned toward Alma. "What did you say?" Alma did not soften it. She told them everything in order. Dayton Regional, Maribel Cross, the changed record, the second baby, the call made months earlier, the transfer to Columbus, the way Mara had been left with one child, and a lie. Grant sat down halfway through because his knees forgot their purpose. Celeste remained standing. When Alma finished, no one spoke. June stood by the door, one hand over her mouth. Grant looked at Mara. He looked older already, not by years, but by recognition. "I did not know," he said. Mara held Nora closer. "You did not look." Celeste looked down at the baby in her arms. The love on her face was real. That was the cruelest part. She had loved a child who had arrived through a theft, and still the love was real. "Her name is Willa," Celeste whispered. Mara looked at her. "Then bring Willa to me." Celeste did not move at first. For 3 weeks she had woken at the smallest sound from that white bassinet. She had learned the shape of Willa's fingers, the little sigh she made after feeding, the way her forehead wrinkled before she cried. None of that love vanished because the truth arrived. That was what made it hurt. She looked at Mara, standing in the foyer with Nora against her chest, and understood that one woman's answered prayer had been another woman's stolen breath. Celeste kissed Willa's forehead. "I am sorry," she whispered. Not to the room. Not to Alma, not to Grant, to the baby. Then she crossed the floor and placed Willa into Mara's waiting arm. Mara held both girls for the first time. Nora stirred. Willa turned her face toward the sound as if some part of her had been listening for it since the day they were separated. Mara closed her eyes. Grant stood across from her, pale and still. "I should have looked for you," he said. Mara opened her eyes. "Yes, I failed you. Yes." He swallowed. "Tell me what to do." Mara looked down at her daughters. "You do not fix this with money. You do not fix this with one apology. These girls need a father who shows up every ordinary day, even when nobody praises him for it." Grant nodded. "Then that is where we start," Mara said. Celeste picked up a small overnight bag from beside the stairs. She looked once at Alma, once at Grant, and then walked out through the front door without asking permission from anyone. The house stayed silent after she left. In Mara's arms, Willa made a small sound. Nora answered with one of her own. Mara looked down at both of them and breathed.